My name is Nicole Hutchison, and I was 26 years old when I learned that being dependable can slowly turn you invisible. If you'd asked anyone who knew us back then, they would have said I was lucky, that Tony Miller was a catch, charismatic, social, effortlessly charming in the way that made rooms orbit him without trying, the kind of man who could tell a story and make strangers feel like old friends. Meanwhile, I was the steady one, the planner. The woman who remembered deadlines, paid bills on time, and believed that love was something you built brick by brick, not something you chased like a spark. We met in college, both studying business, but our paths through it couldn't have been more different. I worked part-time jobs, stacked scholarships, and learned early how to stretch a dollar. Tony came from comfort. Not obscene wealth, but enough that money never hovered over his head the way it did mine. Weekend trips, no student loans, a safety net I didn't have. Still, I fell hard. He made life feel lighter, and I thought maybe my steadiness could give him something lasting. We dated for 4 years, moved in together after graduation. A small one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood, nothing glamorous, but it felt like the beginning of something solid. I believed in us deeply, not blindly, but deliberately. 2 years into our relationship, Tony lost his first real job, a marketing position he loved. The company downsized, and he came home that day, hollowed out, sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands like the floor might swallow him whole. He cried, questioned his worth, said maybe he wasn't cut out for adulthood after all. I didn't hesitate. I covered rent for months, picked up extra shifts, cooked meals when he couldn't bring himself to eat, helped rewrite his resume, practiced interview questions late into the night until his voice steadied again. When he finally landed something new, he hugged me and said, "You're my anchor, Nicole. I don't know what I'd do without you." I believed him. Then there was his family. His parents' divorce hit hard, especially his mother, who leaned on him emotionally in ways that felt too heavy for one person. Constant calls, long emotional spirals. One weekend, she showed up unannounced, suitcase in hand, needing somewhere to stay. Our apartment suddenly had 3 people. I slept on the couch without complaint, ran errands, kept the peace. One night, Tony whispered to me in the dark, "You're the only stable thing in my life." I took that as a promise. I turned down a higher-paying job in another city because he wasn't ready to move. Told myself there would be time later, that growing together mattered more than getting ahead alone. But about 6 months before everything collapsed, things began to shift. Not dramatically, quietly, the way rot starts under polished wood. He was always on his phone, smiling at messages he'd tilt away from me. Our date nights turned into me watching movies alone while he scrolled endlessly beside me. And then came the casual mentions of Julia Harper, his ex-girlfriend, his high school sweetheart, the one who'd cheated on him years ago and left a scar he claimed had healed. Julia posted about her solo trip, he'd say lightly. She's always been so spontaneous. At first I didn't mind. I trusted him. Nostalgia happens. But then the comparisons crept in. "You're so reliable," he told me once, almost fondly. But sometimes I missed that thrill. It stung. I tried harder. Planned surprise weekends, picnic dates, hikes. He canceled more often than not. Intimacy faded. When I asked if something was wrong, he snapped that I was hovering. Looking back, the signs were all there. The late nights, the new clothes, the guilt that flickered across his face when he thought I wasn't looking. I stayed anyway, loyal to a fault, certain that communication would fix what silence was eroding. I didn't know yet that stability to him had become something to outgrow. The night everything finally cracked didn't feel dramatic at first. There was no storm outside, no shouting, no warning, music swelling in the background like in movies. It was a Thursday, ordinary, forgettable. We'd ordered takeout from the Thai place down the street, the one Tony liked because it reminded him of a trip he once took with friends before we met. The containers were still warm on the coffee table, the TV murmuring some forgettable show neither of us was really watching. We sat on our worn couch, close enough to touch, but already miles apart. I remember thinking how tired I felt, not just physically, but in my bones, like I'd been holding something heavy for too long and hadn't noticed how my arms were shaking. Tony set his fork down carefully, too carefully, like he was arranging props for a scene he'd rehearsed. He didn't look at me right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the dark TV screen, his reflection faintly visible in it. When he finally turned, his expression was calm. Not nervous, not guilty. Calm in a way that made my stomach tighten. "Nicole," he said, folding his hands together in his lap, "I've been thinking a lot lately. About us. About what I want. That sentence alone should have scared me, but I nodded, forcing myself to stay open, to be the reasonable one, the woman who listened. Okay, I said, what's going on? Julia reached out a few weeks ago. He continued, voice steady, almost gentle. She says she's changed. She's in therapy now. We've been talking. The room seemed to tilt just slightly, like the ground under my feet had shifted without warning. I felt it in my chest, first a hollow drop, but I kept my face neutral. Years of being the stable one had taught me how to do that. What do you mean talking? I asked. He leaned back, crossing his legs, and that's when I saw it. That faint, confident smile at the corner of his mouth. The look of someone who believed he had control of the situation. Of me. I'm not sure you're the woman I want right now, he said plainly. Julia. She makes me feel things I haven't felt in a long time. Excited. Alive. Alive. The word landed like an insult, as if the life we'd built together was something dull and suffocating, something he'd endured rather than chosen. I need time to figure this out, he went on. I don't think it's fair to rush such a big decision. I owe it to myself to explore this. Explore. I repeated it silently, tasting the bitterness of it. He was talking about another woman, his ex-girlfriend, and he was framing it like a personal growth exercise. So what are you saying? I asked, even though I already knew. He looked at me, then really looked at me, and his expression softened just enough to feel calculated. I'm asking you to wait, he said. Give me a month, maybe 2. Let me see where this goes. If I choose you, we'll be stronger for it, more honest. I felt my hands curl into fists in my lap, waiting. Like I was a coat he could hang on a hook while he tried on something else. Like I was a backup plan neatly folded and set aside. You want me to just sit here, I said slowly, while you decide between me and your ex-girlfriend. Yes, he replied without hesitation. I think that's reasonable. Reasonable. The audacity of it made my ears ring. He was admitting to emotional cheating with the confidence of someone who believed honesty erased harm. Worse, he spoke like he was doing me a favor. I'm being upfront with you, he added. Most people would just sneak around. You should appreciate that I'm telling you the truth. There it was, the twisted logic, the entitlement, the expectation that I'd be grateful for his bare minimum decency while he dismantled our relationship piece by piece. And honestly, he continued as if this were constructive feedback. You've gotten a bit predictable, Nicole. You're safe, dependable. But sometimes I need more passion. I don't want to lose you, though. If things don't work out with Julia, I want us to still have a chance. I stared at him, really stared, seeing him clearly for the first time. Years of memories rushed through me in flashes, covering rent, sleeping on couches, turning down jobs, holding him together when he fell apart. And now I was being asked to wait quietly while he chased a feeling he thought he deserved more than me. If you really love me, he said softly, leaning closer, you'll understand. This is about my happiness too. Something inside me cracked, but I didn't let it show. I sat there in silence, heart-pounding anger and heartbreak tangling together until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. He watched me confident, patient, like he already knew my answer. After a long moment, I nodded once. Okay, I said, I'll wait. The relief on his face was instant. He smiled wide, triumphant, like someone who'd just negotiated a great deal. He leaned over and kissed my cheek, light and quick, already distracted. Thank you, he said. I knew you'd understand. He picked up his phone almost immediately, thumb moving across the screen, and headed to bed like nothing monumental had just happened, like he hadn't reduced 4 years of partnership into a casual waiting period. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his words echoing in my head, waiting, exploring, deciding. The confusion burned at first, then something else crept in beneath it. Clarity, sharp and cold. I realized then that agreeing to wait wasn't loyalty. It was the moment I stopped fighting for something that no longer existed. The next morning, Tony left for work like it was any other day. He was almost cheerful, humming, as he grabbed his keys, leaning down to kiss the top of my head, like that gesture still meant what it used to. See you tonight, he called from the doorway. We'll talk more. I waited until I heard his car pull away, the sound fading down the street before I moved. There was no dramatic rush of anger, no sobbing collapse to the floor, just a strange, heavy calm, like my body had already accepted a truth my heart was still catching up to. I stood in the middle of our living room and looked around, really looked at the life I'd helped build and was now quietly stepping out of. Our apartment was small, 1 bedroom, beige carpet, furniture we'd picked out together when we first moved in. arguing playfully over colors and prices, back when compromise felt like teamwork. I walked to the closet and pulled out 2 old duffel bags, the ones we used to pack for weekend trips, when we still laughed easily. I started with my clothes, shirts, jeans, sweaters, folded, neatly placed, carefully, no throwing, no rage, just methodical movements like I was closing one chapter and filing it away. Then my shoes, my laptop and charger, toiletries. I took the watch my mother gave me for graduation, the one Tony used to tease me about for being too serious. Funny how seriousness was a flaw now. I left the shared things behind. The couch, the kitchen appliances, even the TV. None of it mattered. I wasn't trying to punish him. I was just leaving. As I packed, memories kept surfacing uninvited and relentless, painting the walls that awful shade of blue because he insisted it would be calming, laughing about it later when we repainted it white, hosting holidays with his family, his mother eyeing me skeptically, while Tony squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "She'll come around. You're the one." Nights when he'd fall asleep on my shoulder, safe and unburdened, while I stayed awake, planning our future. I stopped in the kitchen and stared at the counter for a long moment before tearing a page off a sticky notepad. My hand didn't shake as I wrote, "Good luck with your decision, Nicole." I left the note beside his keys, took one last look around, and walked out. I locked the door behind me, loaded my car, and drove away without looking back. I went straight to Rachel, an old friend from college who lived across town. She'd noticed something was off the last time we talked, and had told me half joking but sincere, "If you ever need a couch, it's yours." When I showed up with duffel bags and hollow eyes, she didn't ask questions. She just hugged me and pointed to the spare room. That evening, around 6 o'clock, my phone started buzzing. At first, it was a single text, "Nicole, where are you?" Then a call, then another. I didn't answer. By the time I checked my phone later that night, there were dozens of missed calls and voicemails. Curiosity got the better of me, and I listened to the first one. His voice was light confused. "Hey babe, I just got home and your stuff's gone. The note, what's going on? Call me back." The second voicemail was less amused. "Okay, this isn't funny. Where did you go? We agreed you'd wait." By the third, panic had crept in. "Nicole, please, pick up. We need to talk." The calls kept coming. 10, 20, 30. Texts flooded in too. "You're seriously ghosting me over this. I was honest with you. Julia doesn't even mean anything yet. I was probably going to choose you." Probably. By midnight, he'd called me 87 times. His friends joined in. One message read, "He's a mess. What the hell happened?" Another accused me of being dramatic, of overreacting, as if quietly removing myself from a situation where I was being treated like an option was some kind of cruelty. I blocked his number. Lying in Rachel's guest room that night, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, the reality finally settled in. 4 years. Gone. Not because of a screaming fight or a betrayal caught red-handed, but because he believed I would wait patiently while he weighed his desires. It wasn't just about Julia. It was about the assumption, the confidence that I'd stay, that my loyalty was guaranteed no matter how little respect he showed me. The silence I chose that night wasn't punishment. It was protection. Over the next few days, Tony tried everything. Emails, social media messages, even reaching out through mutual friends. One early email read, "I came home to an empty apartment and panicked. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we talk? I need closure." Closure. Another word people use when they really mean control. His friends kept pushing. "At least talk to him," they said. "You owe him that." His sister called from an unknown number, her voice sharp with accusation. "He's not eating. You just disappeared. That's cold, Nicole." No one asked why he thought asking me to wait was acceptable. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I focused on logistics. Changed my mailing address. Notified work I'd be remote for a bit. Found a small short-term rental of my own. Nothing special. Just a studio with beige walls and secondhand furniture. But it was mine. I started going to the gym again. Early mornings, headphones in, sweat burning through the confusion. Reconnected with friends I'd neglected. Picked up hiking on weekends. Let my life expand again in ways it hadn't while I was orbiting someone else's needs. Work noticed the shift. My focus sharpened. I volunteered for projects I'd once avoided. My manager pulled me aside one afternoon and said, "You've got fire lately. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." The silence stretched into weeks. Sometimes I wondered about Tony, whether he'd chosen Julia, whether he missed me. but the thoughts grew quieter with each passing day. In the space where confusion used to live, something steadier took root. I wasn't waiting anymore, and for the first time in a long time that felt like freedom. By the time a full month had passed, my life no longer felt like it was on pause. The studio apartment still smelled faintly of fresh paint and someone else's old furniture, but it had begun to feel familiar. Mine. I learned which floorboard creaked near the window and which coffee shop down the street knew my order by heart. Small things, but grounding ones. I was building routines again, morning runs, evening stretches, quiet nights where no one's mood dictated the temperature of the room. Tony, on the other hand, was unraveling. I didn't hear it from him directly. I heard it through the cracks. Mutual friends who reached out just to check in, coworkers who let things slip, acquaintances who didn't know how much I already knew. At first, the story he told people painted me as the villain. I'd overreacted, apparently. I'd abandoned him while he was just trying to figure things out. But stories like that don't hold up for long. The truth started leaking out in pieces. He and Julia were together now, officially. He'd moved in with her faster than anyone expected, convincing himself it was fate, that he'd simply chosen the wrong stability before, the thrill he'd missed, the passion he claimed I lacked. Only the thrill came with chaos. Friends mentioned late-night fights, her volatility, the way he'd gone from confident to constantly anxious, checking his phone, explaining himself, apologizing for things he didn't even understand yet. She was jealous, controlling, unpredictable. The same traits he'd once described as intense and exciting now kept him on edge. I listened when people talked, but I didn't ask questions. I wasn't rooting for his downfall. I was just observing, detached. Meanwhile, my own life kept moving forward. I threw myself into work and pitched a project I'd been sitting on for months. It landed. I was put in charge of a major account, a responsibility I'd once felt unready for. Turns out I'd been ready all along. I just hadn't had the space to prove it. A mutual friend, Lena, finally said it out loud over coffee one afternoon. He regrets it, she told me carefully. Losing you, I mean. He thought you'd wait. Of course he did. Apparently, the moment I stopped answering, his confidence cracked. Without me as a safety net, every argument with Julia felt heavier, every doubt louder. He'd reach out to people asking if they'd heard from me, if I'd said anything about him. Like my silence was something he could still negotiate. Then came the messages. They started mildly. Emails with subject lines like, "Can we talk?" and "I miss us." He wrote about how confusing things were, how he'd made a mistake, how he'd never meant to hurt me. He reminisced about memories about how good I'd been to him, about how safe he'd felt with me. Safe. The word he once used like an insult now sounded like a plea. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted. Subtle guilt crept in. You left without letting me explain. I was going to choose you. You didn't give me the chance to fix things. As if my absence was the betrayal. One night, I accidentally answered a call from an unknown number, half asleep and disoriented. The silence on the other end was brief, then his voice flooded through. "Nicole, thank God. Don't hang up." I sat up, heart steady, surprisingly calm. I didn't say anything right away. "Julia isn't who I thought she was," he rushed on. She's unstable. She yells. She checks my phone. She says I owe her for choosing her. I messed up. I know that now." I closed my eyes, listening, not because I felt obligated, but because I wanted to hear the truth stripped of its performance. "I was confused," he continued. "I didn't realize what I had until you were gone. You were always there for me. You helped me with everything. I need that again. I need you." There it was, not love, need. "What do you want from me, Tony?" I asked finally, my voice even. "To meet," he said quickly. "To talk. I can come to you. We can figure this out." I felt nothing. No rush of sympathy. No pull to fix him, just a distant sadness for the version of myself who would have run to help without thinking. "You already figured it out," I said. "You chose." "That's not fair," he snapped, frustration bleeding through the desperation. "You left before I decided." I almost laughed at the irony. "Your decision doesn't matter anymore," I told him. "I'm not waiting." He went quiet, then angry. Accusations tumbled out about how I'd given up too easily, how I'd made things worse, how I owed him a conversation closure understanding. I hung up, blocked the number. It escalated after that. He showed up at Rachel's apartment one evening, pounding on the door, shouting my name. Rachel texted me from the other room, asking if she should call the police. I told her no. He eventually left, but not before shouting that I'd ruined everything. The truth was simpler. I'd removed myself from a game that required me to lose. As weeks turned into months, the rest of his life began to crumble. He lost his job after missing deadlines and calling in sick too often. Julia burned through his savings on impulsive plans and half-baked business ideas. Their relationship turned openly hostile and eventually explosive. One night after a fight that spilled into the hallway, she kicked him out with nothing but his backpack. He had nowhere to go. People started seeing him differently then. The confidence was gone, the charm dulled, the narrative he'd spun about me didn't hold up under scrutiny anymore. Friends distanced themselves. His family stopped defending him so loudly. I heard all of this secondhand like updates from a life I no longer belonged to. And I realized something important. The woman he'd left me for wasn't his freedom. She was his consequence. 6 months after I walked out of that apartment, I ran into Tony at Lisa Monroe's wedding. I hadn't expected him to be there. Or maybe part of me had, in the abstract way you imagine ghosts in places where memories live. Still, when I stepped into the garden reception space, string lights glowing overhead, laughter. Drifting between tables, I felt grounded, calm. I'd almost forgotten what it was like to enter a room without scanning it for one person's mood. I looked good that night, not in a vindictive way, in a peaceful one. A tailored navy dress I'd bought after my promotion, hairstyled simply, posture straight. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I just wasn't shrinking anymore. I'd brought a date Daniel Wright, a colleague I'd been seeing casually. Nothing dramatic, no declarations, just ease, conversation that flowed without effort, a man who listened without keeping score. Then I saw Tony. He stood near the edge of the reception tent alone, shoulders slumped, like gravity had finally decided to claim him. His suit didn't fit quite right. His hair looked thinner, unstyled. The confidence that once preceded him into rooms was gone, replaced by something brittle and restless. When his eyes landed on me, the recognition hit him like a wave. Shock first, then disbelief, then something close to desperation. I watched it all pass over his face before he started walking toward me. Daniel noticed the shift immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I said and meant it. "I'll be right back." Tony reached me near the bar, hands twisting together like he didn't know where to put them. Up close, he looked older, tired in a way sleep doesn't fix. "Nicole," he said, voice low, "can we talk just for a minute?" I nodded once and gestured toward a quieter corner. Not because I owed him anything, but because I no longer needed to run. We stood there, the music-muffled laughter distant. I didn't know if you'd come," he started. "You look good. Happy." "I am," I replied. He swallowed. "Julia's gone. Completely. She cheated. Left me with debt. I lost my job. Friends stopped answering my calls." He let out a shaky breath. "I know I don't deserve it, but I've thought about you every day. About how wrong I was." I studied him, waiting for the familiar pull to help to soften to fix. It didn't come. "I asked you to wait," he continued, eyes shining now. "That was selfish. Cruel. I see that. You were always the one. I just didn't know how much I needed you until you were gone." Needed. There it was again. "I've changed," he said quickly. "I swear. We could start over. Take it slow. I'd do anything." I felt a strange sense of symmetry settle over me. The same words, the same urgency, the same attempt to rewrite history, just from the other side now. "You told me you needed time to decide," I said calmly. "You said it wasn't fair to rush, that you owed it to yourself to explore." He nodded, tears threatening to spill. I was wrong. I waited, I continued, my voice steady. "Just not the way you expected. I waited for myself." He reached for my arm, fingers brushing my sleeve. "Nicole, please. We had 4 years. Doesn't that mean anything?" I gently stepped back, breaking the contact without drama. It meant everything I said. That's why I won't go back. His face crumpled. "Don't you care about what I've been through?" I held his gaze, not cold, not angry, just finished. "Not anymore," I answered. "You made your choice when you asked me to stand still while you moved on. I didn't leave to punish you. I left because I finally understood my worth." Silence stretched between us. "You can't just erase me," he whispered. "I was your life. And you were ready to set me aside," I replied. "Goodbye, Tony." I turned and walked back to my table. Daniel smiled when I returned, offering me a glass of champagne. "Everything okay?" I clinked my glass against his. "Never better." Later, I heard Tony left early, alone. No scene, no grand collapse, just quiet acceptance settling in too late. That night, lying in my own bed in the condo I'd bought with my own money, I felt something close to gratitude. Not for the pain, but for the clarity it forced on me. Love isn't asking someone to wait while you